Welcome back, folks, to the Lighthead Online Video Show. The Lighthead Online Video Show is brought to you by Keystone Technologies. Go to KEYSTONETECH.com. Greggy.
Check them out for all your retrofit needs.
There you go, Keystone Tech. Mm-hmm. So we're here to talk today to Ted. Is it Ted Egert?
Ted at Egret. Ted Konnerth.
Ted Konnerth. Okay. So Ted took issue with our article, my article in Lighthead magazine, The China Question Part 2. And we decided to invite him on the show and discuss the issue. Ted, what was it about The China Question Part 2 that offended you?
Well, I understand Gonzo journalism. I get that. I think Gonzo journalism is a misnomer because I hold journalism as a profession with professional ethics and standards. And the Gonzo adjective basically adds in the disclaimer that it may not necessarily be accurate and may not necessarily be professionally communicated. So if we call it Gonzo fiction or Gonzo storytelling, I probably wouldn't have a big issue with it. I've found the article to be not very impactful in terms of what you guys found, right? I boiled it down to two issues. You identified a manufacturer who was putting LED lamps or light bulbs, whatever we want to call them these days, into different manufacturers' boxes and selling them as such. And you identified that the working conditions at a lighting manufacturer in China were substandard. Neither of those are new. In fact, when I was there over 20 years ago, I could have vouched for both of those same things. So I don't have a problem with, this is TED Magazine's strategy. If they want to go Gonzo in terms of their journalistic style, that's fine with me. I mean, that's a business decision for them. NED does a great job of attracting young talent or trying to attract young talent in our industry. If the Gonzo approach works, I'm all for it. I just didn't find it professional by what I consider to be the TED Magazine history. And I just made a simple comment.
Right. I think I think you're mistaken on what Gonzo journalism actually is meant to be, and it's from Hunter S. Thompson, Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, is the key work in that genre. And what Gonzo does is it uses storytelling, somewhat outrageous situations, and a non-fiction-y approach. And I use that word not lightly, non-fiction-y, meaning that it's meant to point at a deeper truth. And that deeper truth is what I believe as the author is the perverted relationship between America and China when it comes to the manufacturing of a host of products. It's just that my particular expertise is in LED lighting, and most of the, not all, I mean, some specific things in that article were fabricated. And, not fabricated in the sense that made up, but the dialogue was real, although I didn't remember exactly what everybody said. But all the events occurred, wouldn't you say, Greg?
Yeah, I mean, it was, 4 or 5 years ago now, but all of the events, as he stated, it occurred. Whether we said everything that was said, maybe not. But yeah, it definitely was our experience, and I can vouch for that, being there with him.
So I think what I'm trying to point at in the series, which is going to be a 4 to 5 part series on China, is that America's relationship with China as a manufacturing hub has some serious issues with it with respect to morals. Now, perhaps it's legally okay, perhaps it's even ethically okay, because one can choose one's ethics, but I don't think it's morally right. Do you take issue with that?
Well, the China issue certainly is not new. Back in my Cooper Lighting days, we were sourcing from China. That goes back 25 years or more. So I think the dialogue needs not necessarily to focus on China. China has all kinds of issues that I would agree with you may not be ethical or moral or possibly even legal. But the ideology of the relationship with China was fostered by American manufacturers who either had a fear of not being able to get the right price or the fear of their competitor, and they started sourcing from China. We've grown that business. So whether the president thinks that the trade deficit is real or not real or just or unjust is irrelevant. We created that. So American manufacturers have created that, global manufacturers, candidly, not just American. But right now, China is, I think, responsible for over 60% of all the electronics that we import. That didn't happen overnight. That happened because eventually, with size and with scale, you become far more efficient at that, and you own that business. They own that business. So we can point fingers at them and say, wow, working conditions are really substandard. Absolutely true. But the bigger issue is who put them in that position? I've got a great example. I have a distributor friend of mine that I've known a lot of years. I called him out of the blue just to check in and say hi. And he runs a very nice distributor, sizable distributor, plays in a lot of different markets. And, I used to sell to him when I was running the sales organization at Cooper Lighting. And after I left, certainly not because I left, but after I left, they migrated over to Acuity. And less than a year ago, I called him and said, hey, how's life going? And I said, how's Cooper treating you? Now Eaton. How's Acuity treating you? He said, I don't buy from either one of them anymore. They basically stopped serving my business. It was difficult to get response from them. So I'm importing my own products from China under a brand label that I've created on my own. So that's a response to a market condition that changed his relationship with American manufacturers. And the concomitant response to him was his gross margins increased by over 10 percentage points. Can we fault him? I don't think we can fault him. That's a strategic move by a savvy businessman who apparently took no hit on revenues or customer relationships, but improved profitability of his company because the distributor supply chain broke down for him. He was no longer getting support for his vendors. So,
well, not only was he getting support, but reality, I think what you're saying, I don't see any disagreement between us in terms of this situation. I just think that in my article, highlighted like I said, the perverse relationship. I mean, America would not have tolerated this kind of behavior from any other country other than China. So there's a sense in which that, and even now, like China is a rising power in the world. And the relationship is one of opponent, in a sense, for world domination. And you're entering into a situation where the values of the West are being challenged. And here you have a situation where manufacturing is completely being offshored. We're abandoning our values in order to do so, all in the name of price. There's nothing else there except for the price of the product that's driving this. There's nothing else. And so, from my perspective, I'm actually, by using Gonzo journalism, even though it may offend you, it's designed to offend you, Ted. That's the entire point, is for you to be offended by it, or at least take notice of it. And I think Americans need to have this hypocrisy pointed out to them that, hey, if we have American values, I'm a Canadian, if we have Western values, Why is it that we treat non-Westerners different than we would treat our own people? And isn't it incumbent upon us, like is lighting not a militarily strategic technology? Why are we offshoring all these assets? Why are we sending all these factories over there? Because with manufacturing comes innovation. And all a host of other issues, which will come up in my articles and which will be presented to you in a Gonzo fashion, so as to make you step back and say, holy mackerel, is this actually real? Did this actually happen? And yes, it did. So I don't think your issues are as, I think that your concern with the article is shallow, while the issues are very deep. Is that fair to say, Ted?
Yes.
I didn't get a sense of the depth of your issues, at least in part two. So I thought those were shallow, and I thought those were conditions that have been present for decades in China.
Of course they have. So what's the problem with pointing it out?
Nothing, absolutely nothing. No, my whole point is that profanity is not an elegant way to identify a problem.
It's not elegant, but it can be very effective.
Well, but the analogy is you can use cayenne pepper to add spice to a dish. When it's coated in cayenne pepper, you really don't know what you're doing in cooking. That's kind of the analogy for me.
Sure.
So, I'm not averse to the use of profanity.
Sure.
I'm averse to, that wouldn't be an article that I would have taken home and showed my wife or showed my grandkids. Right? So, is it relevant? Are your issues spot on? Should there be other voices added into the mix of saying that this is probably an unsustainable relationship of continuing to buy even more from China and offshoring even more of our technology? I'm right there with you. I took stylistic exception for how you presented it, and I write a lot, and you won't find any of the words that you used in your journalistic article in any of the stuff that I've written.
Right, but you write in prose.
I do.
Right. So I'm writing in a dialogue. I'm writing in a dialogue form of events that occurred and people and places that were real and that happened. And TED Magazine is not, while it's not an R-rated magazine, it's not something that has a rating on it. It's certainly for adults to take pause, read, and think what the message is below that and why someone maybe that the shocking value of it is required in order for people to take the wax out of their ears a little bit.
I'll respect your opinion. It would not encourage me to read that article from start to finish.
Did you finish it?
Again, there's only because we set up this call. Total honesty. All you get from me is the truth. So
yeah. I appreciate that. I actually like negative comments more than I like positive comments, because I find that people tend to be light and fluffy with their positive comments, and they tend to be direct and honest with their negative comments. And so when I saw your comment, I really wanted to reach out, because Greg and I have a message to this industry, and it's multifaceted. Okay. There's a lot of things that we see in this business, a lack of leadership, vacuum of leadership is what we've called it. We see very little difference between so-called some of the manufacturers are excellent, but we see a relationship that is going to deteriorate further if we continue to carry on as an industry the same way. And I think that the issues I pointed out in that article, and will continue to point out, transcend lighting altogether. It's really hitting at the issues deep within the relationship between America and China. And lighting is really a medium to do so. And my trip to China and my memoirs from that trip are being used to hit home in a different sense, in a way that a prose article never could.
I bet you 37 cents I could rewrite that article in a prose form that would still be provocative.
I'll bet you a steak dinner. You can't touch my writing style. I bet. See, so like for example, let's take a different note here. And so the Fear and Loathing Las Vegas, which is the seminal work of Gonzo Journalism, that I don't know if you've seen the movie or read the book. I studied it in university, quite in depth in a modern American fiction course. And that story had a message. That story had a message that was talking about the fragility of the American dream. That was talking about the hypocrisy of the path that America was on. And I think the message that Hunter S. Thompson had in that book, while I'm not a fan of Hunter S. Thompson's politics, his morals, his ethics, or anything about Hunter S. Thompson, I think he was correct. And I think I will stand by what I said in my article. And while the message may be profane, it's designed so in order that it be heard and understood and offensive and get to people and bother them a little bit. That's the entire point, Ted.
And I live on the side that the profanity bothered me more than the message. I mean, I deal in provocative messages every day. And you talked about a vacuum in leadership. My entire career is talking with leadership. I work directly with CEOs across the country every day. So I see really good leadership. I see some pretty bad leadership. But it wouldn't mean that I would call them out using profanity. Was that a notification? I apologize.
That's okay. But I'm not calling anyone out in particular. I'm just talking about the trip I took with Greg. Greg, do you have any final thoughts here for Ted?
No, I don't think so. I just kind of wanted to listen in on this and appreciate you, Ted, commenting on that, because it was an experience that both of us had. And, the greater message, as Michael mentioned, is where the lighting industry is going, how we're going to fix what maybe is broken right now. I don't know that we have that answer, but that's what we're doing in our podcast and continue to do. And I guess one question I have with your background experience, do you think we'll ever bring manufacturing back over here, or do you think it's lost for good?
Based on the magnitude, the differential of electronics assembly, I don't think that's coming back. But the full package, the full lighting solution, I see that coming back, if not remaining here. I don't see that degrading. I mean, the potential of crossing borders into Mexico for a labor pickup, but that I don't see as endemic as I see the electronics. And electronics isn't just China; it's Asia. So they own that, and I don't know that we can. Tariffs be damned. I don't think anybody would jump in and try to take that away from anybody. I don't think we can win that battle, honestly. Sad to say, but yeah, maybe you guys can help induce them to do that.
Ted, thank you for coming on the Light Ted Online Video Show. This show is brought to you
Thanks
by...
for having me, guys.
No problem. This show is brought to you by Keystone Technologies. Go to KEYSTONETECH.com. That's KeystoneTech.com. Light made easy, the retrofit kings. Thanks for listening.